Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Get Real with Kacey Kasem. It's the podcast taking a look behind the scenes of the fantasy sports industry through interviews with some of your favorite content creators. On this one, I talked with Kendall Valenzuela of Matthew Berry's Fantasy Life. We had a super fun conversation where Kendall talked about playing fantasy football for the first time, being a ball girl for the Seattle Mariners, putting out content she enjoys, the women's panel at the Fantasy Football Expo, the 3 pillars of the social media world, attending college at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism, and so much more. Please give Kendall a follow on Twitter at kvalenzuela17. You can follow me on Twitter at @thekaceyKasem and the podcast at GetReal_pod. And as always, this podcast is a proud member of the DAP Network. Huge shout out to the listeners who make this podcast possible. If it weren't for you, this podcast wouldn't be where it's at. Thank you again for taking the time to listen to this pod. All right, and now, here's Kendall Valenzuela on Get Real with Kacey Kasem. Here's hoping my computer watched.
Here's hoping. We're
I got
doing
a big
it.
error message earlier, and I was like, shit. All right, so Kendall, I'm so excited that you're here. So excited to have you on Get Real. For people that don't know you, we're going to start with just asking you how you started playing fantasy football, and then we'll get into some more stuff later.
Yeah. So for people that don't know, this is really my first, I've always been really transparent with it, but this is my first real season, full circle, full time in fantasy football. So I think I started like most people where you're young and your parents are doing it or an influential person to you. And so I remember, a backstory is that my dad coached high school football when I was growing up. So it was always, football was always around and it was always on and all that good stuff. So I remember coming home from some of my soccer games or something, or coming home from school some days, and there would always be all these random people in our house, and they would be doing live in-person drafts, all that good stuff. You got all the pizza around. They did it super old school at the time, where like you have a deck of cards, and whoever has the lowest card gets the 101, the first overall. So he'd be like, "Pick my card for me," and then he would get. And then he would get mad when he'd be like picking 12th in some of them. And I'd be like, "I'm so sorry. Like, I don't like that." So yeah, it just kind of started from there, and then just kind of grew up around football, like I said. So playing fantasy was almost like you always did it, right? You always did it with your friends, but getting serious into it was, graduating from college and then knowing, hey, I really like this. I really like football. You can put all your football knowledge to the test by doing this against your friends. And so then, started doing it, I say professionally, but talking in fantasy football, doing it professionally just this year. So it's been a fun ride to see it all come up into this moment, into right now.
Yeah, like when we were both at the expo, and I had people
Yeah.
coming up to me being like, "Who's that person?" Like I'm supposed to know everybody, but I did know who you were. So,
I
um,
know.
it's awesome. Actually, speaking of the expo, I'm kind of gonna jump around, but
Yeah.
at the expo, we did the women's panel. So for people that don't know, the Fantasy Football Expo goes on in Canton every year, and we had the pleasure of speaking on that panel. When you were asked to be a part of that and then going into it and actually doing it, what was the thought process that you had there? Like, how did you feel, and what was the experience like?
Yeah. First of all, any time that I am asked to do any kind of public speaking, to speak on being a woman in sports or being a woman in fantasy, is just, I always just get, first of all, I'm so thankful and I'm so grateful that they think of me in those situations. And then I'm also so grateful that we are surrounded by people that want to have those conversations, because I think it's so different when, people say, "Oh, we want to have conversations about this and we want to hire, more diverse people." But then when you actually put it into action and you actually have people like at the Fantasy Football Expo that are absolutely so amazing, and they say, "Yeah, actually, we want to have a panel with you on it, and we want to have a panel with all these women and talk about this and what you guys do and how you can, we can better the fantasy space." So that, initially, that those are always my first thoughts, is that I'm thankful and then I'm grateful that people want to be having these conversations. So I think that those were my initial thoughts. And then going into it, it was just we had such a good time, right? It was just,
Mhm.
it was all of us hanging out, and it was just very, it was a great conversation. And that's where, like I said, that's where it all starts. Is we had a room full of people, and it was overflow. I mean, people were, going outside the room, standing there. They were, we got so many compliments after that day. So I just always love when any kind of event wants to hold that kind of conversation. And then when we got however many people we did participating in it as well, that was even better. It kind of restores your faith in everything that you're doing this for, because a lot of us are remote too. So being able to go all together and be all together and see everyone and then get that kind of support just always means the world.
Exactly, and I
Yeah.
wanted to get that in right now because I didn't wanna forget to bring that up because
Yeah.
it was such an awesome
It was
experience, but
awesome.
okay, so let's talk about sports in general because you said that growing up, you were surrounded by it. What was your
Mhm.
relationship with sports when you were younger? Like, did you play and did you watch?
Mhm.
What teams, so on and so forth?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm from Seattle, Washington. So if just in the back of your mind when I'm talking about all of this, that's where I am. I've always been a big Seahawks fan. A big at the time. I was really young when it happened, but my parents were huge Seattle Sonics fans, Supersonics fans. They sold the team unfortunately, so then they vowed to never watch NBA again. And I tell you, when they did that, we never watched a single NBA game ever again. So love that. I love the Mariners. I mean, if you talk to me about the Mariners, I'll probably like just get emotional because I've just let that's been my team forever. That's really the team that got me into just absolutely loving sports. And then yeah, I played throughout my whole life, which was so fun. I played soccer, I played softball, and I played basketball. And the two that I will say that I was actually good at what were soccer and softball. So it was fun going through that. And I did that through from kindergarten all the way up until high school, playing varsity in high school. So that was just super fun. And I think something about me with sports that I just have always loved is that I mentioned my dad, but my family has always been into sports, and it's kind of been our way to connect. We connect through other ways, like playing. We love playing card games and stuff like that. But with sports, my dad was my coach at one time. My mom was my coach at one time. My grandfather was my coach at one time. So it's just always been fun to be around it and to have something to be able to bond with your whole family with. It's always been that. It's been calling my dad during Mariners games, calling my mom. She loves the Mariners. We all at one point worked for the Seattle Mariners just for fun, because that's how much we loved it. So that's kind of how I got into sports, and just knowing that this is the community I want to be around when I'm working. Because it sounds so cliche, but when you work it with something that you love, it's really true that you're never really working a day in your life. So it's just been, I knew that from a young age I wanted to do something in sports, and didn't really know what right away until I figured it out. And so that's how I kind of got into it all.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you because growing up, I'm sure your thought thoughts were, "I'm not gonna," this wasn't really a thing when
Yeah.
we were growing up, right? So, was there anything from growing up that you were like, "Okay, I know I wanna be involved in sports and stuff," but did you have, like, a career goal or, like, a dream job when when you were younger, we all wanted to be something, but did you have something?
Yeah, yeah. And I'm still working towards it, but I still just want to be a part of any kind of, broadcast team talking sports, or a network or anything. That was the big goal. I think always people start with the sideline reporter goal. And I think I'm kind of, we will see we'll see where things take me here. But that was always the big one, is that I remember whenever we would be watching TV, I would see, you'd see Aaron Andrews on the sideline, and you'd see Linda Cohen in hosting Sports Center or along those lines, and Andrea Kramer, and you would just say, okay, I would say, that's going to be me. And I've manifested that since. I think there's a video of me somewhere that we're eventually going to find of me in graduating 7th or 8th grade, and we had to say what we wanted to be when we grew up, and that is exactly, I said, I want to be working in sports, and I'm going to be a broadcaster. And so it makes me so happy because I have achieved, some of those goals. And your goals are always moving. So those are still in line with me. But that was definitely growing up. It was a reporter, a broadcaster, working in sports. And so it's kind of fun to look back at that whenever my mom ends up finding that video, and we can just, broadcast it out to the world. It'll be fun to see it.
Yeah, we need to get your mom to, yeah,
Right.
definitely
I'm like,
find that. Yes.
I'm like, you gotta keep track of the stuff, mom, for the archives and stuff. You gotta know where they
Right?
are.
Exactly, exactly, and, you brought up working with the Seattle Mariners and how your
Mhm.
family did that as well. So what exactly did you do when you were with the Mariners?
Oh man, it was the best job. I tell you, I always it's a joke, but sometimes I'm so serious when I say I peaked when I had this job with the Mariners because I was their ball girl and I was their ball girl for 5 years, and I got into that. Like I said, I played softball, so that helped a lot. You have to have some kind of coordination, and so thankfully, when you had to go through this, it was like it was a grueling interview process. I'm going to tell you that right now. Like you had to send in a letter to say why you should be considered for this job, and then you had to go in and kind of, they check out your personality, make sure you're personable because you're talking with fans the whole time, and making sure they have a great experience. And then at the last part they're like, okay, they say, hey, bring your glove. So you go out there and they're whipping these baseballs at you. You're sitting where you're going to be sitting during the game, and they are whipping them at you, and you have to try and like make sure if it's bouncing off the wall, you get your glove in the right spot, and if you can dive, go ahead and dive. So I went through that whole process, and thankfully they said, hey, we'd love to have you. I was able to do it for those, I think, 4 years or whatever it was, and it was so fun for me. And like I said, my family just loves baseball, so at one point my mom was like, I'm gonna go just work there for fun because then I can watch the games for free. And I was like, well, you can watch the games for free at home, but like that's, we can take it
Yeah.
to that next level and do it that way. And then at one point my little brother did it, and then my aunt joined us, and so it was just truly a family affair. So it was, yeah, whenever we talk Mariners or anything, like I was at one of my really good friends' weddings over the summer in September, and they finally made the postseason for the first time since 2001. And there's just this video of me like streaming it and crying, which is so embarrassing at one point. It was truly
That's
like
not
that's just,
embarrassing.
I know, it's just like we all have one of those teams where it's like if they do this, I'm gonna be so proud. And I'm so sorry. The bar is so low for the Mariners. So it's just them making the postseason that made me cry. So it was but that's kind of how we got started in it.
I was a big Rangers fan for a while.
No,
So,
you get it. You
okay.
get
I
it.
mean, yeah. I mean, World Series time was like
That's
great
true.
until it wasn't, but
That's true.
that happens. But going into college, what were your goals going into college, and what did you exactly do while you were there?
Yeah, going into college was, I always had my eye on Arizona State. My dad went there, and it was great because it was a great journalism school. I went to the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism in downtown Phoenix, and so it was between there. The Edward R. Murrow School at Washington State University has a great program there as well. So I knew when I wanted to do broadcasting that I would need to go to some kind of journalism school to learn the background behind it, because it's so much more than just, okay, you get on camera and you have a microphone and that's all you do. Like, no, you have to be so much more than that. So I went to Arizona State knowing that that was my goal, knowing that the Cronkite School was where I wanted to go. So once accepted into there, it was a program that puts you through the ringer in a good way. The Cronkite School wanted to make sure that when you left and graduated from college, you could be in a position to succeed and in a position where people wanted to hire you because of all the things that you could do. So my goals going into college were to learn as much as I could, to get into as many internships as you could. And they had a minimum, like you had to do a minimum of 2 internships to even graduate. So I thought that was an interesting way to do it. And so I wanted to learn as much as I could and kind of be that Swiss Army knife person, because coming out of college, that's when a lot of, news, even just we did news, we did sports broadcasting, all that. That's when a lot of those organizations and job places started to want one man shows type things. We want to send you out with a camera that you can set up on your own, that you can light your scene yourself and then do the news and then be able to pack it all up, come back, edit it so it can be ready for on air. So that's what they expected a lot of us to do. And so when I went in there, I learned how to make sure to do that. I learned how to write a lot, and did a lot of writing. I covered a lot of sports. I covered, the softball team and the soccer team, and ended up being the first female sports editor of our paper at Arizona State. So it was a good time, but it was a lot of it, long story short, and to long answer to your question is I wanted to go in there to make sure that I can hone in on a lot of skills that I knew I had, to make sure that when I was ready to graduate and ready to go, that any job would see that I was ready to go in and fill a ton of roles that they needed.
Did you have any idea, what was to come after college? Did you have something set up, or what exactly was the process of going from college to the real world?
Yeah, no, it was scary. It was scary. It was scary as hell, like I think it is for everyone. It was terrifying because sports jobs, they try and scare you a little bit in college, right? They're like, you're gonna make no money, you're gonna have no time for your family and friends, and you're gonna have no holidays off. And you know what, that was it's I respect that they try and do that in college, because it does weed out people who may say, this, I don't like this that much to not be home with my family at Christmas, I don't like this that much to not make a ton of money starting out. So I didn't have a huge plan. I will say that my internships saved me a lot. I worked with Sports Radio 1043 The Fan when I was in college, and they ended up hiring me out of college after I did their internship. So I worked with them in the summer of I think it was the summer of 2017, I want to say. And then once I graduated May 2018, it was a call that they had put in. We have this job. We think you'd be great for it. Would you come and do it? And so thankfully, again, full transparency, not a lot of money, and you were working like crazy, but it was a step in the door that I knew that I wanted to get into. So that's kind of where I went. But yeah, in college, you never really know. You're always searching, looking, hoping that your internships can maybe turn into something more. So I think that's whenever I talk to people in college, or anyone that asks about it, it's that making those connections, and people who help you out a lot down the road if you know the right people. So getting those connections early in college is really, really helpful.
And doing internships, is there anything that you learned from your time doing those that you've taken with you into what you're doing now, something that you've held on to?
Yeah, I think it's just, everyone, it's again, I'm just full of cliches here today. I don't know why, but it's what a lot of things. I worked with Fox Sports Arizona when I was doing an internship, and that one was absolutely incredible, aside from the one with 1043 The Fan, but really the one at Fox Sports, because you did so many different things. That's what they wanted in that internship. I want you to be with the broadcast team. I want you to go with, into the truck when we're producing a Diamondbacks game. And it's really, really simple what I learned from them. And that is to treat everyone, to treat everyone with respect, and to treat them, well, no matter what they're doing, because the industry is so small. And I know, again, like that could be a cliche, and people may not believe us when we say that, but there are so many connections that people have to one another. So making sure you treat everyone the same with respect, and you're just a good person, that's going to go a long ways. It's going to go way farther than just your work ethic, because they could say, hey, you work really hard, but you did so, and you did X, Y, and Z to this person, we didn't like that. They talk, and the industry is small. So I think that was the biggest takeaway. And the biggest piece of feedback, honestly, I got in college was like, hey, we loved your work, but we liked you as a person even more. And I think that went way farther than I knew at the time, to end up getting internships turning into jobs, and so forth. So that, I think that was the best piece of advice I got.
And you've got so much that you've done in such a short period of time. You've been all over the place. You've been, had your hands in a lot of stuff. How did you come across getting involved with putting out fantasy football content and betting content and all that stuff that kind of goes hand in hand with one another?
Yeah, it was you said it. I've been a lot of places. I was talking about that with someone the other day, and I was in Denver, and then working with 1043 The Fan, which is sports radio, and then went to Pro Football Focus, which was a great time, but moved to Cincinnati, Ohio. And then, came back to the West Coast, came back to I'm in LA now doing stuff with Matthew Berry's Fantasy Life, which is absolutely fantastic. So I think, to answer the first part, getting into the content creating space, honestly, it was an opportunity that was given to me, starting at Pro Football PFF. Honestly, starting at 1043 The Fan, they allowed me to, go on air and host shows and host videos. And they said, we want you to do this and run with it. And so I think what got me first into it was just the ability and the accessibility for them to say, hey, we want you to be doing this right now, and saying, okay, yeah, let me do, I really want to do that. Thank you for giving me a shot. And then continuing to just work to create content. So was doing that at the Fan, started doing that at PFF, started doing a podcast with my good friend Ben Brown, and we did betting stuff there, and that was super fun. And it was uncomfortable, I will say, some of the times, because I was not a seasoned sports bet. I'm still not a super seasoned sports better. I like to say I like to learn all the time. And so it was really making sure that while I was uncomfortable, I knew that when I was uncomfortable, I was doing something that was helping me grow as a broadcaster and as a person, as just a sports mind. So I said, okay, I'm going to do this really uncomfortable thing, which is talk about sports betting and just learn as much as I can. And then that turned into stuff with fantasy life right now. I've got Jordan Fiegelman and Elliot Kristen and Matthew Berry, who had all kind of eventually reached out and said, hey, we would love you for this position if you want to talk football and fantasy football. So I really turned everything that I learned from my previous two big jobs in knowing football, because football and then you get into nitty gritty stuff of knowing fantasy football, and it is so much different than being able to tell you, who the top defenses are in the league right now. Like it just gets so much deeper than that, and with players and everything on the offensive side. So they kind of said, hey, we want you to do this, and they honestly believed in me a lot, and I appreciate that so much, because they put me in these positions where, again, I was uncomfortable in a good way. I was nervous. I was excited to do things, but I was really nervous, and I knew that if I was nervous and a little bit uncomfortable doing something, that I was, again, continuing to grow, continuing to learn. So to be able to do that with some of the best minds in fantasy football, like the ones I already named, like with Dwayne McFarland and Marcus Grant, to be able to do that and them say, hey, go host a Sirius XM show with Peter Overzet. Okay, I'm going to do that, and go do videos at what you want to do videos with. So it's been fun. And that's kind of how I first started getting into it, is just them opening the door and just saying, hey, we're open to doing creative stuff, whatever you think is going to be good. Hey, here are some ideas we have, and just kind of running with it. I think that's, again, another good piece of advice that I give people is like, hey, you should be uncomfortable in new situations, but you should also be okay if something doesn't work out. Like, we put out videos from me that didn't hit, and it was like, okay, back to the drawing board. Like, this was a not good video. I thought it was funny, but I guess other people didn't think it was funny. So I think that's how I kind of got into the content, though, was people coming to me and believing that I could do things, and then allowing me to go out there and try new things as well.
And the whole uncomfortableness and the anxiety
Hmm.
in a good way. I like how you put that.
Right?
But some people like me are like just nervous by nature, and
Yeah.
for people like me, let's just say, for people like me that are listening, what kind of advice do you have to like kind of get yourself pumped up to do it? Because I know sometimes I let my anxiety take over, and
Oh,
then I'm
yeah.
like, so what kind of advice do you have for people that maybe are a little nervous, but they're excited about putting out content?
Yeah, yeah. First of all, like, I'm right there with you. Like, my anxiety, I'm an anxious person. I have anxiety, panic attacks, all the fun stuff that
Right.
comes with it. And I think, just knowing who you are to start there first, right? That is always so important to me, because I'll get a panic attack or something, and I'll say to myself, like, okay, you're good, we're good, we can do this. Like, going into do the talk at the Fantasy Football Expo. It was like, hey, this is a lot of people, like, we gotta hang on, I'm regrouping here. I thought it was going to be 5 or 10. Now we're out the door. So I think my best piece of advice, though, and something that helps me, and I know that when I say this, that it may not help others, but I really, I host a fantasy show 5 days a week for 2 hours a day, so that turns into 10 hours of radio. And sometimes when I first started, I was like, oh my gosh, so many people are listening to this show. And then I peeled it back and I said, you know what? I'm having a conversation with my friend, Peter Overzet. No one's in the room with me. And you know what? I know I'm going to mess up. Like, I'm going to say something that at the end of the show, I would say, wow, that was either completely incorrect, like incorrect information that I had to take back and say, no, actually, this was the right stat, or just something that maybe just didn't make sense, and that's okay. And so I think the best piece of advice I give is just knowing that you're probably going to mess up, and that's okay, because we're human beings, and to just realize that the only person that's going to that's going to stick to for a long time is only yourself. People aren't going to remember 2 days from now that, I accidentally said the Baltimore Ravens, wrong record. No one's going to remember that. No one's going to remember if I said that they were first in the division and it's the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm going to remember that for like a week and I'm going to sit on that for a while.
Yeah.
But just, giving yourself, give yourself some slack too, is what I say sometimes. Yes, did you mess up? Sure. Hey, that it happens, but no one's going to remember it longer than you are. And so I sit back on that a lot. And just that's one thing when I'm anxious is like, no one's going to remember this if you mess up, if something happens, or if you do maybe not a great job, no one's going to remember. It's only going to be you. So just knowing that you're your own biggest critic. And if you can get past yourself, you can get past really anyone.
Boom, just like that.
Right. Ugh,
No, but
God, it's
that's
awful.
good advice. But okay, so you're with Matthew Life's Berry Life. Okay. Matthew Berry's Fantasy Life. And
Yes.
I remember when I first got into fantasy football and getting on the Fantasy Life app and meeting people and all of that stuff. And Twitter's kind of been one of those places where I've been able to communicate with other people that are like-minded. So how did you stumble across fantasy Twitter? Like, how did that even become a thing for you?
Oh man, it was a open door, like full flood of like fantasy Twitter when I joined, and it was absolutely fantastic. I had a little taste of it with PFF. I had just a little taste of it, right? I was like, oh, Dwayne is and I hope if he listens to this, I'm like, Dwayne is super cool. Oh my gosh, like what a cool guy. Like all these other people over there were like, I was just like, oh, they're so cool. And so then I was announced that Fantasy Life was hiring me, and then I just had a flood of just first to start off with just congratulations, comments, and then follows that I followed back immediately. I was like, yes, yes. I anytime I see like fantasy football on the top of your profile, your profile summary, I'm like immediate follow. So that's kind of how I found everyone. And it is so funny because I was told that the fantasy community, right? The people that are creating, like yourself, like me, like everyone at Fantasy Life, the people that are creating it, again, it comes back to it's a small industry and everyone knows everyone. And so once I started down that down the line of like, oh, okay, this person knows this person, and then I know this person, so I'm going to keep following them. So they all came in waves, and I'm just so grateful for that because without everyone just kind of welcoming me, I always say it, but I was so thankful for the welcome that I got, and I will never ever take that for granted because it was a bigger leap for me, just going in from PFF to a really niche thing that is fantasy football, that where the community is so close and they know everyone, and you're welcoming someone new. And so I will always remember that day and just kind of the months that followed of like, tell me, if you ever need help, and sending people things that I had questions on, and being able to again make those mistakes where I was able to learn in a really nice environment, which a lot of people can't say. And so to be able to do that and have that community and that Twitter rush that happened was absolutely phenomenal.
And I always bring up Twitter because it's like the only thing I'm on.
Yeah, same.
But I
Yeah.
know that you use multiple platforms to get
Mhm.
things out and to put out content. What what platforms do you use to put out content, and what
Mhm.
made you decide that multiple platforms were the way to go on that?
Yeah, I've always, the backstory with me is that I create content, of course, for Fantasy Life. I am also their social media director, and I was, a social media producer at Pro Football Focus as well. So for me, that has always been something that I have that's just stuck with my name and going around in my jobs because, going back to the college Swiss Army knife, that was something that I knew I liked. I loved social media. I learned how to, do a lot of those trends when I was in Denver, and then took it to PFF where we grew the Twitter page to 1 million followers, and we got 500,000 on Instagram in a good period of time. So that's always been something that, hey, we love you as a broadcaster. We also love you doing social. So it's been one in one with me. It's always been hand in hand of doing that at the same time. So coming into it, I knew, my personal pages are of course my Twitter page, which is just everyone has Twitter. At one point, a couple months, a month or two ago, we thought it was going to be dead, but it lives. It long, long live Twitter, whatever it is. And then Instagram has been one that I've always had, and then TikTok I'm trying to grow. If you want to go follow my TikTok account, please do. But TikTok is one that's newer that everyone's trying to figure out right now. And so I've always been, those are the three pillars for me. I've done Facebook before. Facebook right now is not serving a purpose for me, and we're trying to get it to be the other way around. But especially for fantasy life, when we're trying to grow things, that is the three that we try to do. And then again, it's at MB Fantasy Life across all our social platforms. But those are the three pillars of the social media world that I make sure that I at least try and post a few times a week to keep up with everything, and to make sure. It gets harder, at this time of the year, as that, fantasy football's over. So creating content at this time is when you get really, really creative, and you have to kind of lean on other people to get new videos and new content ideas out there. But those are the three that I always recommend to people, at least keeping up one, always having one, so that people have a way to follow you and reach you and know what you're doing.
Hey, yeah, you, that awesome human that's listening to this podcast right now. I'm breaking in for just a moment to let you know that I know you love your fantasy football leagues. I know you do. And I know you want to get something special for the league, whether that be a draft board, a ring, a belt, a championship trophy. There's so many awesome things that you can get for your league. And if you check out Trophy Smack, that's where you need to go to get all that rad stuff. Only place you need to check out. You can go over there right now using the affiliate link in the description, and you can use code GetRealPod for a free ring with the purchase of a trophy or belt. Note, you must have both the trophy or belt plus the ring in your cart for the discount to apply. All right, now you can get back to listening to this episode. And, I like talking to you about that because there are people out there that want to be involved in lots of different companies have people involved with their social media, but sometimes, like, somebody asked me, Dynasty Trade Calculator had me trying it for a minute, and I just can't. So so more props to you. But what kind of advice do you have for people that want to kind of go down that route? But what kind of advice do you have for people that want to, because it's kind of, I would say, maybe out of the box when it comes to fantasy football. You don't really think about that first and foremost. So what kind of advice do you have for those individuals?
For those wanting to, like, get into the social media game?
To get more into the social media game, what would you, besides just those platforms, what kind of advice do you have for people that are trying to get involved in that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I say take risks. I mean, really, that is seriously something that it is a social media is such a beast, right? You could create something that takes you so long, and you could create it. You could, let's just say a video, for example, and you put so much time into it, and you're like, this is going to hit, this is going to be so good. And you post it and it gets, 1,000 views, a few likes, and you're just sitting there like, what the hell? And then you throw something together that took you maybe all of 2 minutes, and it hits, 500,000 views. And you're just sitting back and you're thinking, like, why do I put myself through this? I'm speaking, if you can't tell, I'm speaking from experience of doing a really long video, and then you put all this time into it and stuff. But that's the best piece of advice, really, is to just, you got to experiment, and you have to just, it sounds daunting at times, and sometimes it is for me. I mean, full transparency, I go into some weeks where I'm like, wow, I don't want to be on my phone, after 8 o'clock. But that's some of what it takes, is to know what trends are going on, and to just kind of keep up with the trends, with the times, with what audio is trending right now, with a video template that's going viral. You always have to kind of have a pulse on what's going on. And so to be able to stay on brand and stay on topic, and stay knowing what is going well right now in the social media world, and then the other side, being able to try and replicate it, to try and take risks, to try and be more creative. That's the bread and butter right there, is knowing what a trend is, what something's going to do well on Twitter, what's going to do well on TikTok, and then taking that, running with it, and just experimenting. Hey, this worked out for me. Let's try it again in a different form. Hey, I really liked this style of tweet. Let's do it again next week during, after the wild card weekend games, and see if it hits. So it's really just, It's trying a lot of things. It is knowing that a lot of those things won't hit, but when they do, man, they feel you feel so accomplished and so good. So that's one piece of advice. And then my other one that took me a long time to just figure out is just you have to have some type of way to always kind of be posting. And I'm talking more, this is more for big picture. This is more for if you're doing it for a company, if you're doing it for growth, like instead of just yourself and growing your brand, growing someone else's brand is very, very important. And it's a job that shouldn't be taken lightly. And so when you're doing that, it is knowing that you have to just continually post things because the algorithm right now in what we're experiencing is just it gives you the upper hand if you post, 2 to 3 times a day instead of once a day and just putting out content that is talked about, right? You always want to have something that is gaining views for a reason. It's starting a conversation. It is asking a really important question. It is pinning people against each other. It is pinning Green Bay Packers fans and Lions fans against each other because you know that that's timely. So you always want to have a reason why you're posting it. What is your why? Why are you posting this? What are you hoping that this does? And if you're able to answer that and you're able to post it confidently and say, I think this is gonna work, it might fail, but at least you posted something. So keeping up with those trends and just never being afraid to post those multiple times a day, knowing that something could maybe not hit is the best way to go.
So, looking at the content side of things, do you have a favorite type of content that you like putting out? Is there either like a topic or a certain medium of putting out
Yeah.
content?
Yeah, I love, I'm right now, it goes in phases. You could ask me this next month and it's going to be different because that's how social is and that's the world that we live in is just it's never a slow roll anymore. Something that could be, like I said, something that's popular right now is not going to be popular in a month because
Right.
we have the attention span of like a gnat. So that's fantastic to know. But I think right now, I really, really like any kind of short form video. I think short form video is just so exciting to watch, and not because the attention span is in there, like whatever it is, but it's just we are so busy, and we're finally getting coming down off of that busy season. But to be able to know things and to hit an audience with 10-minute podcasts, 15-minute podcasts, like those are fun when I need to know, hey, what were the big takeaways from, I'll just keep using the Packers Lions game. What were the big takeaways? What happened? How did they lose? And to get that information in a short period of time sometimes to me is very helpful. And same with the videos. We've got the utilization report video coming out, and that's it's not 10 minutes, but it is a video that is absolutely fantastic that Dwayne McFarland does with Jordan Fiegelman, and it just really puts together everything that Dwayne has done research on. And it's really nice because it's not a 2 hour thing, and they make it feel very personal. They make sure that you feel like you know what's going on. And I think so any kind of short form video right now is something that I like to produce. Like I love to create the content. I did one today that'll probably go out soon about the playoffs and just, hey, when are the playoffs, which teams are playing and what time? Like I just, always wanting to make sure that people feel included, even if they're not, in the nitty gritty of it, like we are every single day. So that's what I like right now. In a month, it could be different, but that's what I like right now is those short form podcast videos, anything that can get you up to speed where you're not feeling like you have to sit through 3 hours of
Right.
anything.
And you brought up people are taking in your content and you
Yeah.
including the people in. So basically, you have fans. We all have fans, quote unquote fans. So having these people who are like about your content
Mhm.
and everything, how do you make sure that like you keep them included and that that you kind of have a relationship with the people that watch your videos or read your
Yeah.
stuff?
Yeah, I always, and it's different for everyone, right? I don't have a crazy, Twitter following, anything like that. But whenever I try, whenever someone asks a question or, sends a message that I know that, first of all, that we know that they aren't like mean or anything, because you got to protect your mental health first and
Yeah.
foremost. If you have followers that are mean to you, whatever, say mean things, like it's just it's a block. It's just like you give me no, you like you have no business being on my videos, making me feel like crap. Like you do nothing for me. So first and foremost, protecting your mental health online is like I advocate for that so much, like because you should never have to go on and feel like crap when you're logging on to do stuff that you love to do. And so the second part to that is that I love to make them at least feel included. Like I want to make sure that I'm making videos for, if we go on to Sirius XM, I want to make sure that Peter and I can dive into the utilization report with Dwayne and get into the nitty gritty of like why Jeff Wilson Jr. is going to have 20 plus touches and why his utilization in the last 3 weeks has grown exponentially. We want to get into that nitty gritty stuff. But then I also want to be able to cater to someone that might be newer because that was me like a year ago. So I want to make sure that you feel comfortable if you're just learning too. Hey, the wild card weekend is this weekend. There are 6 games. Here are the times, and here are the teams that are playing. And that's what I try and do with all my stuff. Is again, full circle is wanting to make sure that I know my reason as to why I'm filming this or recording this before I do it, and knowing what I want to have happen after I post it. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for the waiver wire stuff. You helped me know that I'm going to start whatever Tua Tagovailoa instead of Russell Wilson, things like that. So I always want to make sure that I have a reason for posting and that people feel included, whether it's with the kind of nitty gritty stuff and with the easier stuff that might be easier for us, but some people just getting into it might not think so. And just, I always try and reply to messages. I do. It could change it changes when we get really busy, but
Yeah.
just, it's such a human element of it, of knowing that it's always been exciting for me when I reach out to people that I love to follow and they reply and saying
Hmm.
like, wow, this is not just some person that's like way up here on the pedestal that I put them on. This is someone that's a real person that's taking the time out of their day to help me. And I know that some people with a ton of followers can't do that as much, but even I've talked with Dwayne about it, and he you see Dwayne replying to some people in his comments just to make sure that he answers their questions. So that's what I try and do to keep them engaged. I always try new things. I'm trying new video stuff all the time to see what kind of content they like and what takes for them. And I'm making content that I like. That's, first and foremost. No one that follows you is going to like what you're putting out if you're not having an enjoyable time either writing it or talking about it.
Right.
And they're going to feel it. And that's something that I've had happen before, where it's like, I can tell that you don't like talking about X, Y, and Z. And it's like, no, I didn't have a great time doing it. So
Yeah.
if they know that, then if you know that, they're probably going to feel it. So making sure that you're putting stuff out that you like as well.
Yes, 100%. I will
Yeah.
back that because I've been in I've been in situations where I'm like, ugh, really? I have to put out another article, or I gotta do this, I
Exactly.
gotta do that. And it's like, it's not really what I want to write about, or it's not what I want to talk about. So yeah, uh, making sure that you like your content is always a good thing.
Exactly.
And you brought up how you had made connections and things, but a lot of people just starting out are a little concerned about networking and
Mhm.
like how to go about it and the confidence to do it. So for in that situation, like how do you go about networking
Yeah.
and talking to other people in the industry?
Yeah, I would say, the easy answer is don't be afraid to just reach out. And I know for some that can be really, really intimidating. And I understand that. And I think going into it, especially when I was in college, I would reach out to a ton of writers that I loved, broadcasters that I loved, and maybe only two would reply. But at least I had those two. But I know that that's a lot for some people who are nervous about it and don't like that kind of rejection, is just kind of understanding that I I got into a headspace where I said it's not personal. They don't know me. They're not intentionally, and I hope they're not intentionally trying to just not answer people's questions, answer back. And so that's kind of the mindset I had, is it's never personal. So my biggest piece of advice and the way that I did it in college was just reaching out to a ton of people and connecting with the people that are around you now. Like, I think that's so important, where people are always looking ahead sometimes and wondering what their next move is going to be, that they miss the people that are around them that might be working with them. So, making sure that you're talking to people on your sales team, making sure you're talking with maybe someone that you don't work with directly, but that could know people in the future, where they could say, "Oh, yeah, my buddy works at whatever company, and they're hiring there, and they could tell you these things. So making sure that you're not only reaching out to people who I like to use the term fill your cup up. It's just who you really love and who you love to ingest their content. You love to ingest their podcast, their videos, whatever it is. Always reach out to those people, but don't forget the people that are around you now that you could make even stronger connections with. A connection could be there, right? But making those stronger connections with either people you work with in the fantasy space, like you and I are just doing right now, making sure that you do those things first as well, alongside reaching out to new people to connect with.
And the team that you have with Fantasy Life is like a
Mhm.
great team of people. You
Yeah.
can tell that you guys are all on your game and you guys get along. And you've already been talking like stand up stuff about people and
Yeah.
saying good stuff. But how awesome is it to be in a position like that where you're working for a company that has so many awesome people as a part of it and to be a part of that as well?
Oh man, I can't like it's even crazy to just talk about, because you never think that those companies exist sometimes. Like big companies are always going to be there, and you know that a lot of them will always say, "Hey, we want to make sure that we are connected and respect each other and that everyone's having a good time." And I've had that. I will preface this with, I've had that with all my previous jobs, but this one just hits a little different, right? With Fantasy Life, is because we have our fearless leader in Matthew Barry, who realistically, like, none of us would be here without him being able to
Right.
talk any fantasy. And I know that's a lot that I put on his shoulders, but I say it all the time, is like, seriously, he opened that door for everyone. And then Fantasy Life, where we're at right now, we are so happy with where we're at, and we're only ready to just grow. And so to start with such a with a smaller company, right? We're a small team right now. We don't have as many people as we think. We have great contributors. Like, I can't say enough about Kevin and Linda and all these other, Amanda and Jake and all these guys. And you can't say enough about like these people that we have with Sam Wallace and all these people. And then you have more full time staff that are there. So you get really excited that everyone has the same goal, and that's to grow. And so when you have a company that respects you and respects the work that we do in the fantasy industry, and knows that it's a grind. Hey, it's a grind when we start in August and we're just now finishing up some of the stuff in January. Like, you think about that, and it's a long time. So I am just so grateful that I'm with a company right now in Fantasy Life that just values not only my work, but me as a person. And I know
Mhm.
that's, again, another cliche that I'm throwing at you, but when they check in on you, we make sure that everyone feels valued, and we try, and we want to make sure that everyone gets an opportunity to grow, to be able to put something out in the newsletter, to be able to go into our Discord and host something, to have a show on AMP, on Sirius, to just be posted on our social media accounts. It's absolutely fantastic. So what we're starting over there is hopefully something that just floods not only through fantasy, but just even more, smaller companies that are just starting out, is just realizing that everyone that you're working with is a person.
Mhm.
And we've got a grueling schedule, but we're here doing it together, and we're here to lift everyone up. That's kind of what we've been trying to do over there, and it's really worked, because we hopefully people are loving the stuff that we're putting out, but we're also enjoying each other's company as well, and I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, I love all the stuff that Fantasy Life puts out. When I see something come across my timeline, when somebody
Mhm.
retweets something, I'm like, "Yeah, that's so exciting,"
I love
you know?
that.
And it's great to see, and, like, I was with the fantasy footballers for a little bit,
Mhm.
and that's another, type of company that looks out for the people and everybody,
Absolutely.
so because I brought up earlier that I didn't like writing about certain stuff. I wanted to make sure that I'm not talking about, but
Let him know.
no, good. There, but yeah, so I've had Matthew Berry on, and I know that like
Yeah.
I've been like, whoa, when I had him on, because it was like when I first started putting this podcast out, and I was like, okay, how can somebody like that come on some little podcast? And then it's been great being able to talk to people, but like with you not being in the fantasy space for as long as some of the people that I've talked
Mhm.
to. So it's nice to see this fresh take on fantasy football, not
Yay.
like, so
I'm
so
glad.
I really like I don't know. I'm kind of jealous of all you guys because you got that tight knit group over there of awesome
Yeah.
people. But if you weren't putting out content like sports content, is there anything that interests you that you would be like, hey, if sports wasn't the thing, this would be the thing that I'd want to put out content?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, probably. I just you we get to some point where I do think about this a lot, and it just like is one of these things where I sit back and I say, "Wow, I need to get a hobby." Or maybe, I need to do something other than talk and watch sports, because it's just at some point it becomes too much. No, but I do love to, like I said, I love to it's a weird thing, but my family and I grew up just playing any kind of card games, like anything like that. I absolutely love to read, but those are probably the two things. I just love the thing is I love putting out any kind of content. So if it wasn't going to be sports, it would probably be another niche thing that I know I love to do. Whether it's, people I admire so much the people that do daily blogs about their life. Like heads up, my life is not interesting enough. So I'd really have to create something where I'm doing something every day and having to leave the house. Like to
Yeah,
start
leave
off,
that.
just leaving the house is just, hats off to those people that do that every day. So I think just that's how much I love like putting out the content. Though is just, it could be anything where it's like, oh, I'd review books full time, or I'd try and do these other things for other companies to try and grow their product and grow their following. I think that's what I would end up being at. But I just, we love sports too much, and it's, we're deep into it now where it's like we're not leaving it now.
And
So it's fun.
it gets to the point where, like, all your friends and family are like, "Okay, there's other stuff to talk about
Yeah,
besides."
literally. I'm like, I gotta get a hobby or
Uh,
something.
well, okay, hobbies aside, what are the things that you like to do to kind of clear your mind when you have free time to just, like, chill and be you on your
Yeah.
own?
Yeah, no, I seriously, I do, jokes aside, I absolutely love to read. I'm very into, I'm a fitness person, not like fitness crazy, but that's one of the things where I make sure, again, to reference like mental health stuff, is like, I know I need to anyone listening, just you always set aside time for yourself. And I know it's really hard if you're in the fantasy space to do that, because we're just grinding for a really long time, and then it all of a sudden comes to a halt in some aspects. But making sure that you take time for yourself, I love, like the one thing I always do is I love to cook. Like I'm a big, hey, I'm gonna cook my own food. I love trying new recipes. I absolutely love making dinner. So that's kind of my time when you're able to close your laptop. Maybe if, I'm not reading a book during the season because it's just too much, but I absolutely make sure that I am either going to the gym or cooking a meal that I'm really excited about. So that's the one big thing for me, is I make sure, maybe not every night, a hand up, not every night, but when I need to, and when I'm ready, and when I have all the stuff and go to the store, like that's my way to calm down and get out of the space for a little while.
Is there any particular dish, meal that
Oh
you like to make
man.
or
I
yeah.
love I love all the you're never gonna catch me sitting here saying I love this really healthy caprese salad. Like I'm just
No?
never, I'm not gonna say it. I like the fattening foods, the home, the home comfort foods. So enchiladas, anytime you want an enchilada, you can come on over.
I
Same
will.
with the same with like the soups, anything like that. And seriously, I just love trying anything. I think my dad has bought me a new lasagna pan, and I'm like, okay, perfect. I need to now perfect the lasagna. So we're
Mhm.
gonna try that for the next few weeks. So yeah, but any food that's definitely not healthy is probably one that I like to cook.
That's gr Thank you for saying that. My wife's
Right?
like,
I'm
"Yeah,
like,
we
I'm
have
not
to
gonna.
cook healthy," and I'm like, dude, if we're gonna
No,
cook,"
no.
and
It's
first she'd be
then
like,
you're
"Don't call
not
me dude,"
full.
but
I
yeah,
know. And
you're
then
not
you're not
full.
full, and
You
then
need
you
a
don't have
snack.
leftovers. So really, what are we doing? You're gonna cook
Yeah.
again the next night? No,
Ugh,
stop it.
stop it. Although, like, I eat leftovers every day, and, when my wife's out of town, I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to Taco Bell real
Oh,
quick."
for sure, for sure. We're yeah, I honestly tonight, yeah, it's just like it might not be. There's always those nights, right, where you're like, I'm absolutely not cooking anything tonight. Like I'm not lifting my fingers to cook anything. So I'm with you.
Well, okay, so when you watch football, let's go into
Mhm.
that 'cause
Yeah.
everybody's different when it comes to watching football. Do you watch, like, all the games, some of the games, and, like, how are you? If I was to sit down and watch football with you, what would be going on?
Yeah, so my football experience has always been, especially starting at PFF, because when I was in Denver, it was solely focused on the Broncos. That's the big difference that I had to kind of get out of myself when I was with PFF and now coming to fantasy life. So I would only be the Broncos. I'd only hyper focus on them and what's going on. And now going into it, I have all the games on. I'm a red zone person. Absolutely love red zone. That's kind of the bread and butter for me on a Sunday. And then I'll have red zone up on the TV and maybe a very specific game on an iPad or whatever in front of me that's, has big fantasy implications. So whether it was, watching Austin Eckler, seeing what the Bills were going to do in one of their big games, one of those will always be on. And then I'm sitting there with a laptop and I'm taking notes when I want to. But a
Hmm.
lot of my stuff that I never want to put pressure on myself during the day to be like, oh my gosh, what happened? It's always on and I'm always watching and taking notes. But a lot of the research that I do is post game, is I make sure I go through every single game summary. I make sure to go through every single box score and kind of know, but it helps. And it's a lot easier for me when I know that I've watched all the games, right? I mean, you're technically watching all the games for fantasy purposes, especially in red zone. Like you're watching the most important parts, which is who's scoring, who's making the big runs, who's doing the big things right now. And until I'm able to get like 18 TV screens in front of me, or even like 8, and I can split them all, it'll be red zone. But that's usually what I do, is I take a lot, watch them all day, take the notes that I need to, and then really dive into it that evening once the games are done. Once people have kind of their game reviews written, I dive deep into those and make sure that I get all the nitty gritty in the middle that I might have missed.
Do your friends, do they hit you up for fantasy advice, especially
Oh
with
yeah.
you being with Matthew Berry's
Oh yeah.
fantasy life?
Oh
Like,
yeah.
how is that when the season's going on?
It's good. I always put a limit on it, right? Like, okay, I haven't talked to you in 6 years and now all of a sudden, you want the fantasy advice. But no, I absolutely love my friends. I wouldn't be here without, some of the support that I've gotten throughout the years. That, that people might think you're crazy when you say it in 7th and 8th grade, and then when they see you really want to go for it and do it. I've just had such a great group around me that have always, never told me I couldn't do it. And I think that's such a difference. If you have people around you that are saying, hey, I don't, you might want to have a backup plan. Like you should really reevaluate who's in your inner circle, because I think it's just been great for me. Is like, hey, my parents never said, oh, you want to go to journalism, and journalism school for some is one that they say, are you sure? Like, do you want to do that? Is there money in that? I never got any of that. So they'll hit me up for fantasy advice, and then I'll sit back and I'll say, well, you supported me for a really long time, so I guess I'll tell you that you should start Austin Eckler instead of whoever else, like Tony Pollard. Like, yeah, I guess I'll reply to you for that one.
Okay, so speaking of just fantasy in general, like
Mhm.
leagues, let's talk about have you do you you're relatively, in the fantasy space, but do you play Dynasty by any chance?
No, so this is the one thing, like, I'm so excited you brought this up, because this is my, you start and have goals.
Yeah.
I came in and started June 1, and I moved to Cincinnati at the end of June-ish, I think, or right in June. And so my goal was to really learn. I want to learn a lot. I know fantasy, I know football. There's no question about it, but I need to learn a lot more. And I think knowing that and going into it, I was like, okay, I'm not gonna go crazy. I did a ton of best ball stuff, right? I got into best ball a lot in the off season. I said I want to learn about this. I want to learn about Dynasty. I want to, we all know season long stuff too, but now coming into this next season, I'm like full go. I am full go. I want anyone
Mhm.
listening, if they have a spot open, I'm ready for Dynasty. Obviously, the season long stuff is pretty simple there, but doing that kind of stuff, and then all the underdog stuff is what ones that I want to get into, and the DFS space as well. There's just so many different things
Yeah.
that we can do, which is that's why it's so exciting to me, right? Like that's why we get so excited when we're talking about it, is because there's so much more than just I do season long for just one season, and then I hit up my buddies the next year when we're ready to go. Like I'm ready to fully jump into Dynasty, jump into all the DFS stuff, jump into the best ball, all that good stuff. So I'm doing a lot. Just get ready, because
Yeah.
next season's gonna be totally different than the one that we just had.
You're gonna love it.
So
I thought I was
excited.
the last person to join a dynasty league ever. Like I got so much flack for it. Like, why aren't you in dynasty? And I finally like took the plunge and was like, okay, just take it slowly. And
Exactly. I'm
yeah.
ready. I'm ready.
Do you have a like certain type of league that you're more about than others? Like whether it be like a setting that you like, there's like some kind of wrinkle in the
Mhm.
settings, or just like who you're in the league with. So is there a certain type of league you like the best?
No, I'm kind of I'm basic, right? I'm just starting out. I'm super basic. I really do like the more intimate scoring settings where they're changed a little bit, like we did Scott Fishbowl, and
Mm-hmm.
so to go into that and learning the different ways, I think it's so important. When I got into these leagues this season, I wanted to make sure that I had different ones where it wasn't just like, hey, we're doing full point PPR and that's it. Like going into leagues like Scott Fishbowl, making sure that you're drafting these best ball teams where you have to correlate with week 17 because all hell's going to break loose to try and get through. I think it was really important to get just a little sprinkle of that this season, which is what I did. And now going into it next season, I'm excited. Like there's again just so many ways you can do this and digest it and just play it all season. So that's kind of what I'm going to get into. But knowing the different scoring settings, like with the Scott Fishbowl, was so different for me. So then I'm like, okay, we're gonna keep going. We're gonna keep going down the rabbit hole and see what happens.
Well, that's awesome. I'm glad you brought up Scott Fishbowl because I
I
was going to
know,
bring that up. So yeah, I mean, I have to bring it up every time.
of course.
And it's Scott, I know you're listening. So if you're not, well, whoops. So Kendall, before we go, it is your birthday soon. So
I know. Thank
yeah, I'm
you.
so excited about that. So happy birthday.
Thank
If
you.
you could go ahead and just let everybody who's listening know where they can find you and what kind of
Yeah.
stuff you have going on so that they can check it all out.
Yeah. No, I appreciate. I so appreciate. I was so excited when you messaged me. I was like, absolutely, just give me a time. Like, yeah, let me know. Thank you so much for having me on.
For
It's
sure.
been so fun. But yeah, you can find me at K Valenzuela 17. That is my Twitter, and then make sure you go and follow everything Fantasy Life, whatever we put out there. It's usually from myself or Amanda who doing the great job over there. So at MB Fantasy Life, that's across all our social platforms, and then I'll just tell people like, hey, be on the lookout. We're always growing. We've put a lot of different hiring stuff on throughout the last previous few months. So just always be on the lookout. But make sure you go subscribe to our newsletter as well, fantasylife.com. We've got a ton of oh my gosh, we have so many tools coming out. I mean, we've got a betting hub now. Everything, we're just growing so quickly, and it's so exciting because we've got the betting hub now. We had the waiver wire tool. We had the rate my trade. We have the rankings from Dwayne still coming out going into the playoffs. So just go check it out. What's really cool is that everything is completely free. So nothing's behind a paywall. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to be subscribed to the newsletter, but I highly recommend subscribing to the newsletter that comes out every day. But that's where you can find all our stuff. It's a long list, but that's where you can find everything.
I definitely subscribe to the newsletter. It's one of
Yes.
those things where I'm like, yes, when it hits the inbox,
Right.
that's
Every
most of
day.
the time it's spam stuff you get. And so when you get a Fantasy Life newsletter, it's like amazing.
Exactly.
Okay, well, I'm so happy that you joined Get Real. Oh, Kendall, you're such a great human being. I'm so glad
Oh,
that you could
thank
come
you.
on.
I appreciate
I'm sure
that. No, it
everybody's
was
like, why do
fun.
you say that every time somebody comes on? Because hello, it's Kendall. She's great. I met her
I'm
in
trying.
person. We were at the
I
expo. It's a great
promise.
time. So
Yeah, I know, and I can't wait to like see you again.
yeah.
If you're at the what is it, FSGAs?
I
If you're going,
can't. I
okay, it's
know.
fine.
I'm
I'll
gonna be
see
in
you in
Vegas
July.
in at the beginning of
It's
February.
fine. I
So
won't. We'll see. We'll do July. It'll be
okay,
great. But I
we will.
appreciate you so much.
Oh
Thank
no,
you.
thank you. And everybody, make sure you go check out all that Kindle and Fantasy Life and everything have to offer because there's amazing stuff out there. And also, make sure to remember to stay rad. Stay rad. You have to.
You have to.
You have to.
Thank you.